Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Animal Based Dad podcast. This is the show where between my guest interviews with subject matter experts and topic-specific deep dives, the aim is to arm you with actionable insights and information on how to prioritize your metabolic health and improve your overall health and well-being. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Animal Based Dad podcast. I'm your host, Ricky Duplessis. I'm back for yet another of the deep dive series with the fantastic Mr. Roderick Lambert. Roderick, welcome back, sir.
Hi, Ricky. Good to see you again. We should stop meeting like this. People might start to talk.
I don't know. I think maybe we should continue meeting like this because we need people to start talking. So, Rod, we're back for another part of your mini-series in the deep dives. And today's topic is water. So I'll let you introduce that. So over to your good self, sir.
Yeah, well, okay, I'm going to ask you a few questions first, actually,
Cool.
because I want to test how deeply you understand water. It's a crazy subject. But before we get that, I am doing something that is benefiting my water, but it will become clear by the time we get to the end. I'm sitting outside. I do have the sunshade up because I was getting pretty hot in the sun. It's only 10 o'clock, but yeah, I am currently...
We've got our natural sunshade going because it's bloody overcast again.
Well, that's something we'll talk about because what I'm doing is I'm charging the water in my battery, or my water battery. So, Ricky, question: what is water, and why is it important for us?
So, we'll cover what I think is general population-wide understanding. So, water is H2O, so 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen. And it's a molecule, and we use it for hydration. And I think that's where the general population's understanding will start to wane. And since going down my own metabolic health journey, I've started to go a bit beyond that. So water needs stuff like electrolytes, so sodium, potassium, magnesium, to make it electrically conductive. And you need it to be electrically conductive to do the thing that's supposed to do within your cells, and in between the cells and the very sort of part of you. Because what is the statistic? We're like 80% water or something ridiculous like that.
Tell you in a second.
So we're mostly water. So we use it for hydration. We need electrolytes with it. I forget the name of the woman, but there was a famous case. Professor Tim Noakes covers this because he was part of the movement that sort of came, I think he either came off the back of it or it was just before it. But we had a woman in South Africa doing the Comrades Marathon, which is our equivalent to the London Marathon. She drank so much water that she'd flushed her system of electrolytes and actually died during the race. Now, this is many, many years back. But yeah, so water in and of itself, like, you're not going to do yourself much good. For example, you take distilled water that you use for like your car's batteries and stuff like that. That's probably not going to do you much good. You need the water with all the minerals and the stuff with it. And then I think, and this is where you're going to educate us, but you actually produce your own water. You don't need it. Well, you do need exogenous water, but it's not the only source of water that you sell for your cells. Your cells actually create what we call metabolic water under certain conditions. But that's right. About as deep as my understanding goes for the time being.
Okay. All right, great. I mean, all of that is accurate in my book about that Tim Noakes, that hyponatremia. That's it's the cases all around. He wrote a very interesting. It's like, I don't know, 8-part article that he published on CrossFit, and it's fascinating. Typical Tim Noakes style. It goes in at length into industry influence and the bad interpretation of science, the poorly done studies, etc., etc. But his point being is that you're at a great risk of actually over drinking. In many cases. But right, you said it's important for hydration. Okay, that's true. What is hydration?
Sure. So hydration, I would guess, and I don't know the full definition, but I would guess it's got to do with the conductivity of your cells.
Right. Excellent. Great. Because right, yeah, now we're getting to the meat, okay, or the
Yeah.
bone even, because that's the thing. You see all the gurus, 12 cups of water wherever a day, drink 2 liters of water a day. But why? Hydration. What is hydration? Uh, right. What is hydration? Okay, so
It's
let's
so
let's
that you don't look like a raisin.
so you don't look raise. Well, yeah, that's true. But actually you'd die before you look like one of them. But right. So let's get stuck in. Water forms, you gave a percentage, it's about 99% of the molecules in our body. If you calculated all our molecules in our body,
Okay.
then water would be about 99% of it. So along with bacteria, you could argue, and mitochondria, which millions of years ago were precursors to bacteria, you could argue
Yeah.
that we're simply a sack of water and bacteria on legs. Um, Right. It's so, as everybody understands, water is totally absolutely important. When we look for
Yeah.
life on other planets, we look for water. And yet it's one of the least studied parts of human biology. It's ridiculous. It's kind of accepted as H2O, but that's
Mm.
literally because we've been dominated by this for the last 60 or 70 years by this biochemical paradigm. And actually, you have to go into the atomic structure of water to start to understand what it's actually doing. So that's what we're
Okay.
going to try and delve into today.
This episode is brought to you thanks to my work as a Zinzino independent partner. To find out more about Zinzino's product offering within test-based personalized nutrition, or to find out about how to join as an independent partner yourself and build a revenue stream in helping others take the guesswork out of their personal health journeys, please stay tuned because I'll be sharing information later in this episode.
It's not, well, I mean, it's about hydration, but what is hydration? It's not just something we pour in and pour out of ourselves, like cooling a combustion engine. I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
that's where your psycho calories in, calorie out, knuckleheads kind of see it. It's kind of cooling your combustion engine that you've got inside you because you're shoveling coal down, blah blah blah. But no, it's actually it's what is hydration actually? So I'm going to direct the listener to the light diets part 1 and 2 because
Mhm.
actually the topics are intricately and intimately linked. That's because photons are the quanta of biochemistry and physics. It's
Yeah.
that is, that light is behind everything. So we know plants use radiant energy and visible light from, photonic energy from the sun for what they do. Not just photosynthesis, but other things. They even have mitochondria as well, plants do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it would seem strange if animals didn't use the the radiant energy from the sun. And in fact, they do in several ways, viz. The light diets part 1 and 2. But
Yeah.
today we're going to talk about what water has to do with this. Um, we could think of water as a random distribution of water molecules, just randomly
Okay.
flying around. That's bulk water. It's got a name, bulk water. It's the sort of stuff we get out of the tap.
Yeah.
Okay, and it looks random. It is probably random flying around. But actually, water is capable of organized distribution, of organizing itself into a crystalline substance. And that's
Yeah.
because water is not bipolar, dielectric. So it has, if you look at a H2O, you've got an oxygen molecule,
Mhm.
and you've got, sorry, hang on. Talking about water, and I don't know how the chemical structure. H and two O's, isn't it? So you've got a hydrogen molecule and 2 oxygen molecules.
No, other way around. So it's an
Oxygen
oxygen
molecule,
molecule with two
the
hydrogen
hydrogen,
molecules
right.
on the side of it.
The oxygen has slightly more negative charge, electrons, and the
Mhm.
hydrogen has slightly more positive charge, protons. Okay, and that's going to be important. And that's how it creates. And so when you have a water molecule, it has a plus and a minus end, and they're capable, of actually creating a line, if you like, of actually organizing themselves into plus minus plus minus plus minus.
Okay.
Okay.
So just for the listener to make sure that we're understanding on the right track, you're talking about how you would view water through something like an electron microscope if you were like looking at it under the intense magnification at the individual molecules and seeing how they're behaving. So you're talking about water coming out of a tap. Imagine filling a glass, and you're saying the molecules would be randomized and just sort of doing their own thing with no set structure to them. But you're then saying that under certain conditions, it'll actually organize itself and the
Yeah.
molecules will come in line to do some sorts of functions, which we're going to get
About
into.
to talk about exactly
Cool.
right. So,
Okay.
but just before we move into, I mean, some of the people you might want to go and look at. A guy called Jacques Benveniste, sorry, a lauded immunologist. But interesting enough, a lot of renowned scientists have spent the latter part of their career actually going back to and studying water. It's quite interesting,
Mhm.
only to then be vilified and
Yeah,
ridiculed by the
heretics.
scientific. Exactly. Luc Montagnier, who some will know because he was I think he was received the Nobel Prize for isolating the HIV virus. He then took up later on his in his career the study of water, and it's now been repeated, demonstrably able to transfer DNA information into water between two locations, two vials, so actually separated physically.
Okay.
But actually then to be able to identify the information of the DNA in the original vial in this supposedly empty also water, there's the idea of water having memory. Gilbert Ling was a pioneering cell physiologist, and one of the things he did was hypothesize about the interactions between cell water and macromolecules within cell, macromolecules like protein, DNA, lipids, etc. Within cells. He was disputing the accepted theory of cells having membranes and pumps, ion channels, and that sort of thing. So he also was looking at how water actually facilitates the way things actually move into the cell and out of the cell.
Okay.
His work was picked up by Dr. Gerald Pollack, who is contemporary at the University of Washington in Seattle. And he's written books and done a lot of lab work on water. And he's described something called EZ or EZ as an exclusion zone or fourth phase water. And we're going to talk about that primarily today. Then there's there's a whole group in Italy. One name is to look up is Vittorio Elia. Back in the 19th century, there was Victor Schauberger, Austrian naturalist. He observed how water moves in natural context, vortexing and changes, properties and changes vegetation around it. That was from the days when we observed in nature what natural phenomena. Linus Pauling, double Nobel Prize winner, amongst other things, he theorized on the quantum mechanics of hydrogen bonds in water, which were later confirmed. So, what I'm trying to say here is that there are notable research in water at an atomic and subatomic, even going into the quantum biology realm. Interesting enough, right now there's the Spring 2025 video lecture series on the Guy Foundation website, also on YouTube. Recommend. It's pretty heavy physics stuff. I've just watched the first video, but if you really want to get into the real reads, then you're going to be that's a good place to go too. So 2 electrons, H2O, 2 electrons, 2 positive hydrogen protons, and under certain conditions, the charge will split. I talked about the dielectric ability of water well, it has a plus and a minus on each end. I mean, a plus on one end, minus on the other end. And so the question is, what happens to it? I mean, it can charge separate. What happens when it does that? And this has been demonstrated, and I can't find for the life of me the video where someone actually does this in a lecture hall. But when water is in contact with hydrophilic surfaces, hydrophilic meaning attracted to water, so surfaces that attract water, as against hydrophobic, which is like fats, etc. Then then it will actually charge separate and create this liquid crystalline phase. It's between ice and it's between liquid. So it's This has been captured in various experiments with I can't remember his name, the Japanese guy. He was a bit controversial because his scientific methods weren't perhaps as exact as modern science would expect. But interestingly, there's a lady in America called Veda Austin who
Mhm.
has done about 50,000 of these experiments where she quick freezes water to a certain stage of ice formation and has demonstrated that the water crystals that you then see under the microscope self-organize into different shapes, and it depends on where the water sources come from. So bulk water as against spring water,
Mhm.
but also things like putting the water in a petri dish over a photograph, and the ice. The crystals self-organize into a picture resembling that picture.
That's interesting. Yeah.
That's amazing. It's incredible. And also the idea of intention that this is the idea of transformation of energy, so information into water, like Luc Montagnier was experimenting, and then later others have done, is that you can actually you can actually imprint information into water. It has a capacity to store information. Um, so
Okay.
you can think about, I don't know, love in front of this petri dish. You freeze it to a certain point, and there will be some sort of rearrangement of the crystals that recognizes that intention. Sometimes, I mean, if you look at
Interesting. Mm.
VedaAustin.com, I think, um, uh, and she's also got the method there. You can actually replicate it at home. I haven't tried it yet, so you
Okay.
just have like extra cold freezer, etc. And petri dishes and God knows what. But you can do it yourself, which is quite interesting. So there are people around the world doing this in sort of a citizen science way. So
Mm. Mm.
water is fascinating. It creates this easy water zone, which we're going to talk about.
Yep.
It seems to be able to uh, incorporate memory into it, whether that
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
using electromagnetic frequency to transport the information from, for instance, DNA across time and space into a separated vial of water, or intention, or photography. Um, and it has a lot of mysteries about it. About its quite high boiling point compared to other natural liquids that aren't related to hydrogen, for instance, or
Mm.
RH2. So it's a fascinating thing. So just to consider it as something we're supposed to glug into ourselves and then sweat and pee out again, all because it's
Mm.
important for hydration, is let's call it useful in that, yes, we need to glug some water and we need to pee it out, and it serves all sorts of other purposes,
Mhm.
like flushing out, toxins from the kidney and
Yeah.
some sort of mechanical protection for cells, etc. Absolutely, but it's a pretty simplistic, very high level
Yeah. It's
understanding.
about the most narrow view that you could take.
Right, right, exactly. So, right. So the dipole, they charge separate and they form a crystalline gel state. And this crystalline gel state has been demonstrated to not only conduct charge, but actually it creates a filter that only the absolutely smallest molecules can get through. Okay,
Okay.
so that's why they called it initially exclusion zone. They noticed that these micro balls, whatever they call, they're used commonly in scientific experiments, so you can see what's going on inside a liquid, were
Mhm.
pushed away to the edges of this exclusion zone. So you had a hydrophilic surface, an exclusion zone surface, and we're talking about nanometers,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think,
Yeah.
formed, and whatever was inside the water initially, these micro balls were pushed out of that zone.
Okay.
All right. So this is actually a filter. This is really quite important because other people have taken this idea further. And we'll talk about why, for instance, in your arteries, that's really critical,
Mhm.
for instance. So, how it works is that when because of the strength of the electrons and the protons, the pull, it creates a hexagonal shape that forms in sheaths over each other and slightly offset. So basically, it can't revert back, because negative and positive want to come back together again. They're attracted, but because of the actual chemical structure, the protons can't move through this layer to rejoin, rebond with the negative and the negative electrons. So that's what happens. It does that. Why is this important? So what the next thing that in Pollack's laboratory they noticed by chance is that when you shine infrared light or light on it, it was light, that this layer of exclusion zone water actually increases in size. All right. So they experimented with all sorts of different frequencies of light, and they discovered that the very end of the red and primarily infrared was the most effective. It increased this easy water depth, let's call it, the most by quite substantially, like tens, even 100 times bigger. We're still talking tiny little things. Which makes a lot of sense when you then go look at people like Alistair Nunn or Bob Fosbury, who are probably right now the leading group of scientists studying infrared light and near infrared light, because they are saying basically that we need infrared light. We to bathe in infrared light for health. And this would be one of the mechanisms in which we actually store, or rather, the infrared benefits us because it increases the depth of this easy water. And this is essentially a battery.
Okay.
That's what it is. It's a battery. So it's so this goes along with Gilbert Ling's work in that it would be a way of controlling what comes in and out of a cell membrane. Plus, we know that cell membranes must have a charge potential, a negative charge potential to work properly. When they get to zero or positive charge, then we're talking about everything from cancer, cell replication, and that sort of thing. So negative charge is absolutely critical for your cell membranes and for the functioning of your cells.
Okay.
And by expanding the easy zone, you're expanding the amount of electrons that this water is containing. This isn't just your cell. Water is everywhere. It's in the cell. It's outside the cell in the extracellular matrix. It covers pretty much every single molecule in your body. Things like proteins. Think about folding proteins. They have to switch on and off, as it were, fold, unfold. And that requires energy. Where does the energy come from? Well, could it be that it comes from this battery of water, this water battery that it is entirely surrounded with, because that's your source of electrons. And what happens when they don't fold properly? Then your cells, the processes start to malfunction. If they're so again, you could extrapolate this that if they don't have an adequate water battery around them, then they're not going to function properly. Again, leading to cellular dysfunction. And we know that cells have to function for tissues to function. Tissues have to function for organs to function.
There's a whole cascade of dysfunction that comes off the back. Yeah.
So holds negative charge. It's increased by infrared. Oh, and interestingly, back to our light diet, it's demonstrably reduced by blue-rich light. So imbalanced light sources that just have blue, green, and a little bit of red, namely LEDs that we sit under. So they're actually dehydrating you in a very literal sense. So to go back to the question, what is hydration? This would posit that hydration is the electric potential of the water that surrounds pretty much all biological molecules in your body.
Okay.
All right. And if you have low electrical potential, then you are dehydrated. And if you expand that battery, then you have high potential, minus 30 millivolts and more. And that is, I would say, is pretty much the main the main topic, the reason, one of the main thing that we need to understand about water. It's not just hydration. Hydration is actually, are your biological materials, for want of a better word, adequately coated in water that has the right charge potential? And is it and then on a more sort of macro scale, how many free electrons do you have? We know that electrons don't just circle around, they actually move in clouds. Water connects every tissue in our body. And so it would make a lot of sense that the water the water channels in our body, these microtubules that actually are in the extracellular matrix, and thus connect us from head to toe. The water would be a good way of transferring electrons around to where they're needed.
Okay. Yeah,
Okay,
that makes sense.
Okay, so going back to how we create energy, electron transport chain, the proton gradient, the electron gradient, the idea of moving from complexes to the ATPase, that's to do with the movement of plus positive, negatively charged electrons and positively charged hydrogen ions. So that's how we create energy. Similar redox, another term we've mentioned a few times, which is the way that your body either oxidizes or reduces compounds that are created, for instance, in metabolism, from reactive oxygen species, which we think might be a signaling mechanism, into harmless substances. The RS free radicals. We're told are bad. They are when it's overwhelmed. You have cellular stress, oxidative stress. And this process, this is how chemicals change their atomic weight, even to a degree, atomic formula to create chemical reactions that we need. So redox is your redox potential is absolutely critical, and it's very much linked to the charge in your cells. To what degree is it negative? By the way, here, having a negative charge in your cells is a positive. It's very confusing. So you want your negative, you want to maintain negative charge to your cells.
So negative charge is beneficial, positive charge is dysfunction.
Yeah. Disease even. I mean, as soon as you start getting towards zero and then above zero, then you're in a disease state.
Cool.
So that's about the EZ water. What else? I mean, so what are electrons used for? Right. Where do we see electrons in normal normal medical care? So you have the hang on. Don't have it here, but the the electrocardiogram. Okay, so they're measuring the electrical pulses in your heart. The electroencephalogram, measuring the similar, but in your brain. There's something called an electromyogram, which is measuring your ability to actually how the charge potential in your muscle cells. So used for neurological and tests. So we do actually use this understanding in normal medical examinations that you will get at a specialist. Even my GP has a ECG machine. So even your Apple Watch is supposed to be able to do an ECG on you. So
I suppose that's similar to how heart rate monitors and all that sort of stuff works.
Except that I don't know how well it's actually
may
reading
not be
the electrical
accurate,
charge, but
that's the theory underpinning.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Okay. Cool. So hopefully I've kind of, in fact, over all of deep dives, but it's become pretty apparent that the way that our cells function is actually closer to electricity, the laws of physics, than to chemistry. And it makes sense when you think chemical reactions take, a certain amount of time to happen. How could we suddenly have the switch on muscles to jump out of the way of a speeding car, for instance? There's something that is faster than chemistry, a chain of chemical reactions that gets those muscles working. Okay. And we know that is actually, in fact, thanks to Gilbert Ling as well, that's actually a matter of electricity, not
Yeah.
like you stick your fingers in a plug hole, but it's the gradient, electrical gradient that creates the folding proteins to then activate and do what they have to do to get
Okay.
a muscle to work, for instance.
Yeah. Cool. There's a
Food
lot
for
there.
thought, Ricky. There's a lot
There's a
there.
lot there. There's a lot there. So we're saying that water in general, um, the function it serves obviously is hydration, but hydration in its more refined and better understood form is this easy barrier that you're talking about, which is the negative potential around each biological molecule that makes you up. And the greater that negative potential, the better, because that's how we function. We function on electrical charge. And the more reduced that negative potential, going down to zero or into the positive, the worse for us. And in fact, into disease state, dysfunction, and all the negative consequences that come with that. And if you're doing that, I suppose if that's happening at the level of an individual cell, it then depends on how how would I say, on how common that is, because I imagine we know we have cells that go dysfunctional all the time. We have cleanup mechanisms that then deal with those misfolded proteins, so on and so forth. And as long as that cleanup and recycling process is working correctly, then that's fine. But it's not the case that all cells would be perfect all the time, where you then in a disease state. It's natural that you'll have cells that are not functioning correctly, and they'll get cleaned out and replaced by cells that hopefully do. But if the environment you're giving yourself is so mismatched or misaligned that, or the emergent cells are unable to thrive, then you end up in a state where everything starts to become dysfunctional, and that then cascades into disease state and sort of systemic dysfunction.
Ricky, thank you. That's great. And just a side note, I reckon, Neil Friedman, our friend, would be a good person to have to talk about actually things like, the membrane potential and how what you've just described can go wrong, and why this charge gradient is really important for the functioning of cells. And it's not just cells, as I say, it's in between cells. It's on all biological material, if you like. Pretty much all biological material is covered in water. And by the way, pretty much all biological material is hydrophilic.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess I've got a question, because I've heard you talk about this a bit, and I imagine that most people in the audience, or at least a good proportion, will not be familiar with this. Now, most people think of water as something that you have to get exogenously, but we actually create our own to a degree. Can you talk about that process a bit?
Absolutely. Yep. Okay. So, well, at the end of that electron transport chain, or complex 4, just before the ATPase does its nanomotor business and creates ATP from ADP. At complex 4, the electrons come off the chain and are accepted by oxygen. Okay, so that oxygen, when then it's meets with hydrogen, it creates water. So water is one of the byproducts. Some would argue it's one of the main reasons this thing works, and it recycles basically the water in your cells. It gains it from food we eat, and I'm not sure if we talked about it. It's in my series about how we really make energy. It seems that, fat it creates more electrons, creates more water, protein somewhere in the middle, and carbohydrate far less. So so you're actually making water from fat, metabolic water. I mean, that's why camels have humps and bears get fat before winter, etc. It's you'll hear about its calories stored. Well, no, remembering that calories are actually the things that embody calories are actually things that our cells use to do various things. Nutrients, micronutrients, for chemical reactions that we need to have. And then you have all these, hydrocarbons and carbohydrates that then are fed into your mitochondria and other places, but mitochondria for this primary process of creating cellular energy. At the end of that process, there's the ATP, there's carbon dioxide, and there's water.
Okay.
So we make our own water. If you're eating fat, then you're under normal conditions, you'll be making more water. So that's a key way. Also, I mean, everything we eat is largely water. So if you look at, a macro composition of meat, you'll find that maybe 40% of it is if you add up all the percentage of carbohydrate, fat, and protein, then you'll get to about, I don't know, 40%. What would be your estimate? Something like that, 27% protein, 20% fat, and a few grams of carbohydrate, then micronutrients.
Yeah.
So what is the rest? Water. You eat vegetables, again, same thing. What is the large part of that? Different vegetables, different things, but it's water. So we're eating water as well.
Yeah.
So those are two things to bear in mind, which doesn't mean we don't drink water too. And we're going to talk a bit about if you want to, what water to drink at different levels, how far you want to take this in a minute to get to practical application. So we don't just talk about kind of theory. So have I answered your question, Ricky?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. Cool. I mentioned Neil, but also in that amazing, video he made about, what is life, Schrodinger's question. He basically, if you distill it, life is the ability to maintain an electrical gradient in a portable manner. I mean, well, electrical gradient, and animals and birds have been able to do it so it's actually self-sustaining in a portable. It doesn't rely on a fixed external input for that. So that's important. The electrical gradient, that is what sustains life. So in fact, if we're looking for water on other planets, perhaps we're actually looking for an environment that can sustain an electrical or support the electrical gradient that is, combined from the combination of different molecules and thermal and UV energy. Right. So you might want to know, how do you charge your water battery? I've already mentioned it, infrared. Okay, infrared light. 50% of the sun's energy, plus minus, is infrared. If you're in a piss poor English summer with a cloud, then yes, some of that is absorbed by water in the clouds. Okay, so there will likely be less of it hitting the surface of the Earth, but that's really important. You need infrared. Okay, it is. By the way, an interesting fact: everything, pretty much all materials, even man-made ones, give off radiant infrared energy. That's why the military uses infrared spectrum goggles. In the films, you see them put on their night goggles, and they can see pretty clearly, because literally everything, artificial and natural, gives off some level of infrared radiation. Okay, so but the point being is that when you charge it, there are a lot of things we do that actually deplete the electrons in our body, the charge in our body, and the easy water in our body. So you need to charge it up. So that's why another reason I'm not even sure we did talk about infrared last time, but that's another reason we need to be outside in daylight to charge up, to gather this infrared. And Bob Fosbury, really recommend, just Google him. You'll find lots of podcasts with him these days. Talks about the lack of infrared is the modern day scurvy.
Yes, you did mention that briefly in the light diet. I think it was in part 2.
Right. Okay. So one of the reasons it's a scurvy, I mean, is that we're not getting enough of it because we're not actually replenishing our water battery. Another interesting fact: you don't have to sit in the direct sun to do it. Okay. Interestingly, green things, plants, I mean, natural green things, do not absorb infrared particularly well. They do absorb it for their mitochondria,
Yeah,
just like
yeah.
we need it for our mitochondria, but they reflect a large part of it. So just sitting like I am, you can't see it here, but I've got grass in front of me, trees, and right next to me an ivy wall. I'm actually sitting under a sunshade because it's pretty strong, the sun today, but the light is reflecting off all these green surfaces
Yeah.
onto me. So I'm bathing in
Infrared.
infrared, even though I'm in the shade. Plus, infrared, being a longer wavelength, will penetrate through clothes to a certain degree.
Yeah,
Okay, so
it
you can actually
penetrates
be
much
close.
deeper. Yeah.
So that's some things you could do to recharge your water batteries.
Okay.
Practical applications. For instance, there's an interesting point about capillaries. Capillaries, even the smallest capillaries that come all the way to our skin, for instance, are actually narrower than red blood cells. So how do red blood cells get pushed into the capillaries? They do. They change. They're forced into the capillaries and they change shape. If something
Okay.
changes shape, it requires energy to do that. So where's that energy coming from? It needs to have some kind of source of energy. The heart doesn't produce enough pressure to actually create enough
This
pressure.
is an interesting one. Let's take a moment to really unpack this, because this I found fascinating.
It is fascinating, and again, you'll have your heart to pump, and we know that, but actually, this Russian scientist did some calculations. Don't know if he got it 100% right, but there was literally like six levels of what's it called? There was like a million. The heart would have to be a million times bigger to create the amount of pressure required to service all the capillaries, all your body, to actually do what we know that it does. Because we've got the cardiovascular ventricle, what was called the vascular system, pretty well mapped. So what is actually helping the heart get things around? Well, if you think about it, you've got red blood cells that have a negative charge. You've got the endothelium, which is the internal lining, one cell internal lining of your vessel, your blood vessels, so arteries, capillaries, etc. And if you look at, I saw this in Malcolm Kendrick's book talking about cholesterol, although he didn't recognize it, but in the endothelium, there's a layer of these glycoproteins, or what they're called glycocalyx. Imagine it's a bit like a furry carpet, and it has various purposes, etc. But in microscope, when you look at under a microscope, and it's interesting, he has it in the book, but doesn't explain what this layer is. There's a layer of nothing, very thin layer of nothing on the edge of the glycocalyx, separating the glycocalyx and the blood cells. What is that? Layer? I can't wait till someone actually does the research to find out. But you can hypothesize very clearly it's easy water, and that is also you've got the negative polarity on the inside, so it's repelling the red blood cells.
Hey everyone, I hope that you are enjoying the discussion so far. I apologize for interrupting the episode, but I just want to take a moment to talk to you about the work that I do with Zinzino. Zinzino are a brilliant Scandinavian biotech and life sciences firm. Their concept of test-based personalized nutrition is absolutely revolutionary, and they are the pioneers of test-based personalized nutrition. I use their products and solutions myself and my family. In fact, we use multiple of their products. And Zinzino has been instrumental in helping me identify that I was omega-3 deficient, horrendously so, and to get my omega-3 deficiency resolved. You see, their at-home tests give you the data and insights needed to inform your dietary strategy to see whether you have any key essential nutrient deficiencies or imbalances that need addressing. And where you do, they have targeted supplementation stacks that are personalized to you according to your age, sex, and body weight, which means they are most effective to get you back to optimal. This isn't about just avoiding deficiency. This is about getting you back to optimal, and that's a complete and utter game changer. So if you would like to know more, I have linked a short survey in the episode description. Complete the survey,
It asks you some simple questions about your health goals and desires. It takes less than a minute to complete. And what I'll give you off the back of that is a personalized product recommendation out of Enzino solution catalog, telling you which I think best suit your desires and needs and why. I'll then also personally reach out to you to see if there's any questions or queries that I can answer. Let me take the guesswork out of your health journey.
Which means a few things. I said, why is it more of your vessels? Heart disease starts when there's an insult to the inside of your arteries.
Yeah.
Something gets through and creates a repair response. So this easy water, providing it's there, should not permit pretty much, it will permit the smallest and most important micronutrients to get through, but for instance, it won't permit cholesterol to get through. LDL is far too big to get through this easy zone. Unless you've done something to weaken this easy layer, in which case it now has full access to the glycocalyx. So that's why it's important for your heart health.
Just to step it back a second. So the way I've heard it explained before, and it's probably at a higher, more layman's level, but just for the benefit of the reader, the audience, we're saying that the heart does not have the pressure capacity to pump once and move blood all the way through to all the extremities of your body, to the capillaries and all the very smallest parts of the blood vessels. And I've heard it explained that the heart primes and gets the initial motion of blood going, but then there's something else in the body which allows the flow to continue with almost like an inertia, this self-propelling, self-sustaining movement. And your blood's always moving, always coating all the way through. And we're hypothesizing that the electrical charge and the electrical potential of this easy water within the actual lining of every vessel is part and parcel of that inertia, part and parcel of the energy mechanism which allows that blood to continue moving far beyond the reach of the pressure of that initial heart pump.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
Exactly. So the heart, yes, of course, the heart does pump, but it's then perpetuated by this same charge repelling of blood cells and the endothelial the lining of easy water on the endothelium. Okay, you can look this up. You will find bits and bobs of research, but again, it's not something that people are investing money into actually research in greater detail. The other theory, the link connected to this, although doesn't belong to the water subject, is that the shape of the heart. That there is, again, an interesting hypothesis. When you dissect a heart, it actually the muscle is squeezing something. The shape of the heart makes a vortex. So when it comes out, it's actually vortexed round, which we have a vortex of repelling charges. Of course, it increases the ease of which it goes round the body. So, and interesting enough, I was researching this because of my mum's heart failure. Connected, well, one thing not connected to water, one thing connected to water, is that when heart failure is diagnosed, generally it's because some kind of, I don't know, it could be after a heart attack, you've had a scar, the tissue is scarred or something, the muscle's damaged, but the heart shape changes into a more spherical. Not the, a reason we draw a heart like we do is because that is essentially the kind of the shape. Like, imagine something that vortex something. It has to have this kind of ability to squeeze things in a way that rotates it. And when heart failure means that the muscle has collapsed and the shape of the heart and anatomically has changed shape, which means it can't vortex, lost its vortexing power. The other part is that the valves, why doesn't the heart, flow back in? And of course it shouldn't. That's the refraction rate and again, part of the heart failure diagnosis. But again, around this, there's a layer of easy water. So again, it prevents not just anatomically and mechanically, but actually prevents the blood from coming back in because it repels the blood.
Okay. Yeah.
So again, you lose your easy water, your valves will cease to function as well as you're relying literally just on anatomic and mechanical processes. Lose your easy water, you're relying on the heart just to do the work, which it seems to be doesn't actually have the physical ability to do because it doesn't create as enough pressure.
Yeah, yeah.
So maintain your easy water. So that's just a practical implication of, in something that is the biggest killer, heart disease, heart attack, etc. Where you can take this practically. Okay, and I think where else? I mean, what else could I talk about? I think that's all I need to say about EZ water at this moment. We'll get onto the practical aspects in a second. I've got one more thing about water that's really quite important to say. So, Ricky, any questions about this idea of
So
water battery?
I would ask, what is it in modern life that we're doing? Because a common theme throughout this deep dive mini series has been we're getting in our own way. We're doing things in our modern ways that compromise this particular function. So we did inflammation, we did light. So with metabolic water, what is it that we're doing that gets in the way of its correct function?
Right. So going to easy water again, it's been demonstrated by Pollock and his lab that blue-rich light will reduces
the
dehydrate you,
volume.
reduce your
Yeah.
blue water. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Of course, living in air-conditioned, therefore, artificial humidity of the air will lead us to lose water through dehydration, through evaporation and exhaling, etc. We need a certain humidity of air, which brings me to mouth breathing. Again, nose breathing.
Yeah.
Right. Nose breathing humidifies the air going in. Mouth breathing actually dehydrates you because you're losing water through, evaporation in your mouth. So those are three things. The other one is the old subject of, artificial electromagnetic frequencies. Once again, I think Pollock has done also the experiment where I'm not sure which frequency of was Wi-Fi or cell phone, I don't know what. Again, breaks down easy water into bulk water, so it loses its charge.
Okay.
So that's the other way. So those are just four things.
Cool.
And of course, not getting outside.
Yeah, so not getting the infrared bathing that you were talking about there.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So the infrared one is obvious. Get outside, get into natural light, even shaded as you are now. So we're not saying direct exposure to UVA, UVB all the time. You do need direct exposure to UVA, UVB as well as all the rest of the spectrum, but not constant 24/7 all day. You've got to be intelligent with it. But in getting under some shading, as you've explained, you're still getting good amounts of infrared because it's reflected by all the foliage and the greenery around you. So that's beneficial. What do we do about the other things? What lifestyle interventions, what lifestyle adjustments do people consider to improve the quality of their easy water?
Well, of course, removing the things I talked about. So make sure you're in the winter, particularly, you're not in a overly heated environment, because of course with heat we also release heat from we cool ourselves down by bringing to cool that way, but also in terms of losing evaporation from our skin. But nose breathing, retrain nose breathing. The way I've try and do it is by just keeping it at the back of my, that's the way I work, keep it at the back of my mind, and just during the day come back to that idea. Proper tongue position, and breathe in and out through the nose. If you're into like walking or running or something like that, then try and do your exercise for as long as possible using only nose breathing. That's what that way you're increasing you're sort of practicing and expanding your ability to nose breathe. Plus you're increasing your CO2 pressure, which can have all sorts of benefits as well. But in terms of how much oxygen you then take from your bloodstream. So those are two things. Non-native EMF. We live in a complete smog. So do what you can. I mean, you keep your devices there's a the further away there's the inverse square rule. So the further away they are from you, the less powerful the actual um uh what is it, the intensity or strength of the you'll tell me, you're the
Yeah,
you know about
yeah.
this.
It depends on the frequency given off, but I suppose in practical terms, I mean, you're correct. The smog is a good conceptualization of it, because if you think about smog all over everywhere, there's not much you can do about it. It would be similar, but we're surrounded by EMF. So we think radio towers, we think TV towers. It's not just cell phones. Obviously, cell phones as well, satellites, like constant blanket
Wi-Fi,
coverage.
the way it's
Right? Coverage has been the name of the game for a very long time now, and we've been very good at establishing coverage everywhere. So you're constantly surrounded, but what you can do, because not all signal is able to propagate and penetrate through your living space, like get into the home, is then you could probably control within your home environment the amount of exposure that you have local to that environment from your Wi-Fi router, so on and so forth, by having periods of the day where you switch it off. So at night, when you go to bed and you're not needing connectivity, you're not using connectivity, switch it off and just reduce the amount of exposure. I think short of running away into the vast, deep wilderness somewhere, there's very little the average person can do to escape it. I suppose at the extreme, you could build sort of a Faraday box or cage, like copper lining around your house or your room or something. So there's extreme measures that you could take to give you a dead zone, but practically I don't think many people would. So yeah, you could probably just switch your router off when you're not using it, and not have it running 24/7 when it's not needed.
Yeah. Well, exactly. It's impossible to get rid of it. We have to live with it. Let's do what you can. The lower hanging fruit, again, we talked about inflammation, the inflammation deep dive, lower hanging fruit, find them, start there. But of course, you can do things proactively, I mean, positively, to counteract this unavoidable impact. So when it comes to actually easy water, again, grounding, connecting to the negatively charged surface of the Earth, which is a reservoir for electrons. We said, this will help charge your EZ water. Easy water. I call it EZ, but the Americans call it named by an American, which is nice because it's easy to remember. But so there are, and I've got a number of things, like that. And like the water you drink will have an effect too, as well. But that will be combined with the second topic about water, which is important. I'll be brief, and it's deuterium.
Yes.
Okay.
Will be a good one. Yeah.
Deuterium. Okay. So I think we've mentioned it in the past. Deuterium is the heavier, fatter, bigger isotope of hydrogen. The difference is it has a neutron. I was sorry, right. It's everywhere. It's even in air because there's water particles in air, etc., etc. So we're breathing it. It's in very small concentrations. I mean, literally tiny concentrations. It's calculated in parts per million or even billion.
Yeah.
It's actually, we've evolved around it, with it. It's used by different animals and different living organisms for different things, used by plants for hard structures. Think of bark, think of the plant fibers, think of birds, birds of prey that have to dive down at great speeds and then suddenly break before they hit the ground. So for like those hard structures in their wings, to maintain to resist the pressure. We have deuterium in our hard tissues, et cetera, et cetera. So it's used for that. It's a thing of growth. So, which is why I explain that, a lot of kids can get away with eating a deuterium heavy diet, because they're in a growth phase, and the effects won't be noticed until they actually leave that growth phase ends. But the diet continues, and that's when the problems start. Why is it a problem? It has a different dielectric constant, so the ability to store or concentrate electric energy. So water, the dielectric constant is quite high. It's like 74 or something. When it's not full of deuterium, when it's got more deuterium particles in it, then actually it's low. It lowers the dielectric constant, has different magnetic moment. And one of the most important things is that when deuterium gets into the electron transport chain, or respectively the mitochondria, that process, because it's the hydrogen atoms, that then spin the motor, the nanomotor, then deuterium being bigger and heavier. I mean, we're talking like football to football pitch difference in size and atomic weight. It will destroy that nanomotor. So you're actually
gums the system up.
Your motor, that mitochondria is coming, or that electron transfer is coming offline. So you're reducing. So that's why deuterium is something to think about. It slows down chemical reactions in the body, which you talked about. The redox lowers your redox potential, steals electrons. So while it's present in everything in some concentration, typically in the modern lifestyle, particularly with modern food sources, we are receiving too much of it.
Yeah.
So we're out of balance. You can do a number of things to do that. You can avoid factory food for a start. Factory food, and by the way, the things you can do to help your body balance deuterium concentrations are very similar, in fact, almost identical. So when I go through it, it's for both the easy water and deuterium. I mean, they are linked.
I suppose it makes sense that would be similar because it's all part and parcel of the same system.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah, and they both impact our electricity, bioelectricity, if we're going to call it really simply. So, drink water. Of course, always drink water. You need to drink water. How much? That's in the stars, and that will depend very much on where you spend most of the day, nose breathe, mouth breathe, how active you are, all sorts of stuff. So,
hydrogen water.
I was going to mention that a bit later.
Okay.
But that's not one of my.
That's fine.
Yeah, it's not one of my recommendations, but I will mention that. But the lower hanging fruit. So drink water, and I've got some thoughts on what water to drink. But avoid factory food, because factory food is dehydrated so that it lasts longer on the shelves. Thus, it literally has less water content. So you're eating the food, but you're not getting the water you would if you ate Whole Foods.
Yeah.
And because it has less water, it also has less negative charge for you. We talked about avoiding blue-rich light, radio frequency, artificial EMF, nose breathing, etc., etc. The source of the water you drink, when it comes to deuterium, it's useful to know that the higher the altitude where the source of that water is, the lower the deuterium, and the higher the latitude, the lower the deuterium. So water near the sea, near the equator, will have higher deuterium than water from a glacier somewhere in the North Pole. So that's and it's all the way in between. So if you're living, like we do, UK, Central Europe, then the water sourced from a spring here will be have lower deuterium than water you drink from a stream in, I don't know, in the tropics somewhere.
That's higher ground, less deuterium.
Yeah, higher elevation and higher latitude. Also, with electrolytes, you mentioned at the beginning, absolutely, you need their certain, electrolytes function by, being the way they impact the cell membrane, their ions positively, negatively charged, etc. So that impacts how your cell allows or doesn't allow things to get in. It basically supports your cell membrane charge. So
so it comes down to conductivity. Yeah,
comes down to conductivity, exactly.
Okay.
Glass bottles, not plastic. If you're going to drink out of bottles, much better. Let alone the microplastics.
That's a good one. I think it was a meme years ago now. Unfortunately, I can't find it, but I might have to recreate it. And it was poking fun at the bottled water industry because, I mean, certainly here in the UK, the tap water is such that it's not of the best quality, and you're encouraged to filter it at least before consuming it. but ideally you would rather get bottled mineral water or spring water. But then you look at it, and 99% of it comes in plastic packaging. And the meme was the case of your Evian or whatever they're called. They're not a water manufacturer; they're a plastic bottle manufacturer.
And they need something to put in it.
Yeah. So
Look, it's really common. It's difficult because, tap water, different countries, different. I mean, filtering is probably a good thing to do.
yeah,
If you then go and like purify using a distill or reverse osmosis, then as you absolutely correctly said, add back minerals. You can buy,
yeah,
drops of minerals that you can put back into that water. Remember, food contains water, and you're not going to like this, but if you actually uh, plants full of water, and much of that is deuterium depleted water, and it's easy water. So I don't mean stuff you buy in the supermarket that has been lying there for days, but I
mhm,
mean straight out of the ground. You squeeze it, get the. I don't mean juicing. I don't mean blending it. Smoothies, no smoothies, please. On the contrary, in terms of deuterium, especially fruits, deuterium is stored in fruits for well, sugar basically is high in
yeah,
deuterium. So when you're juicing a fruit, you're getting all that sugar in with the water. The water is
mhm,
good. The sugar is not so great because it's deuterium, high concentration of deuterium. So, particularly when it's tropical fruit. I mean, if you stick to fruits in the summer in your location that are growing, then that's okay. That's because, again, the sun is one of the UV actually help and aids our body in rebalancing deuterium. So if
mm,
you're out in the sun enjoying the daylight regularly, and you're eating local seasonal fruits, then from a deuterium aspect, you should be okay. You're also getting that easy water um, from the plants. I
yeah.
was watching
Okay.
Pollock the other day, who was saying you get leaves and stuff, and you squeeze out the juice from the leaves, etc., etc. Probably tastes gross, but nevertheless, that is
No, then,
pure. That is essentially pure, easy water.
yeah,
Go past a mountain stream or a spring in the forest. In where I live here in Czechia, there are springs in the forest circadian retreat. I did my fast the other week.
yep, yep,
Loads of springs, so that water, it's going to be structured. It's going to be deuterium depleted. So
mm,
that's great, of course.
ah,
Um, move. Move, as you're telling people, Ricky,
yep,
frequently in your posts. Yes, you're increasing the energy demand of your mitochondria. You're producing more cellular water. So
yep,
move. At the same time, you're and that water. I didn't say about the cellular water, but it's deuterium depleted. Okay, so
yes.
the more cellular water you produce, the lower the concentration of deuterium in your body will be.
Now that seems almost counterintuitive because movement or exercise, as most people conceptualize it, is associated with depleting you of water because it dehydrates you because you're using it up. So maybe you can unpack that
God,
dichotomy
okay.
for us a little bit.
Well, you're losing. How are you losing that water? I mean, through heat, I think, because you're overheating. Is that not the case? I
Mhm.
mean,
Yeah,
and you are cooling yourself with sweat. Is that not the
yeah,
case?
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So at the same time, you're drawing out toxins and things like deuterium, which is why we sweat as well. Sauna, by the way, another tip. Yes, but at the same time, you're producing water. I mean, I don't know the ratios. People go
Yeah,
dry fasting for, someone I was talking to on LinkedIn has done an 8-day dry fast. That means no food, no water.
yeah.
Okay, for 8 days.
No,
I'm not gonna.
that's mind blowing because common consensus is like 3 days without water, you drop dead, like finished.
Right. Now, I don't know, I mean, again, there's presumably an imbalance that perhaps if you are doing exercise, you're actually losing more water than
Mhm.
you are creating. I don't know.
Yeah,
That might be the case, and for sure, hydration during exercise is we're thirsty for a start, you know.
No, it's necessary. Yes.
So,
Body's telling you it's necessary.
but you get 30, so you know your body's exactly is necessary. So you know, I'm not suggesting anybody tries an 8-day dry fast. I will try a 1-day dry fast and then 1 day and then extend. But I want to be a bit careful about the things. So, but you are, I mean, it is if your mitochondria are functioning, you're producing water with the production of ATP. I mean, you're doing it 24 hours a day because your mitochondria are functioning more during the day, doing slightly different things at night, but they're still functioning. You're still creating water. At the same time, we're breathing out, water from our lungs. So when you're exercising, your breath rate increases. So again, there are various ways we're losing water, and there are ways we're creating water. And I'm imagining that you need to make up the difference from exogenous sources.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay, eat fat produces more ATP in cellular water. There you go.
There we go. I'll just do that instead of squeezing leaves.
It's only a tasty way of doing it. But it makes the water in your, through that, rather than leaves, you're actually directly consuming the water. And from a deuterium point of view, again, fat, if it's grass fed, is lower in deuterium than plants or most plants, not all.
Oh yeah, it'll come down to I imagine it'll come down to the species appropriateness of the diet that the livestock has been fed.
Right.
Because different livestock will have different species appropriate foods.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah.
And then at the end, I've got a question for you and the audience, which I don't know the answer to. It's linked, but not. It's kind of answers on a postcard because I'd love to know the answer myself. But okay, substances that have demonstrated in the lab they increase easy water. We talked about infrared light, but another one is turmeric. Demonstrate. Yep, it builds your easy water. Coconut water. I mean, coconut
water is full of electrolytes, so that makes sense. It would increase the negative charge potential.
I don't know the mechanism. I haven't investigated the mechanism. And most of all, ghee or G, purified butter.
Yeah.
Yeah, ghee. Okay. So that's interesting. And yes, it's been like and grounding. So basically, to answer your question, what can we do given the electrosmog, given the modern lifestyle? Then find these things. The water you drink, the light you get, the food you eat, and the amount of time you spend in contact with the negative charge of the earth, all will help you to mitigate, counteract these things.
Now, and all overlap with the other lifestyle interventions we've spoken about for all the other things as well. So inflammation, circadian rhythm, light diet. It seems there's a common theme to the interventions, just in the same way that the mechanisms involved within our cells overlap and are intertwined and interlinked and interdependent to a degree. There's not too much different you would have to do for easy water,
right?
Per se, that would differ from what you would be doing to lower inflammation, to improve your circadian alignment, right, so on and so forth. It's all kind of part and parcel of the same umbrella.
Exactly. So while we got 6 hours of us talking about different things here to listen to, full of information, but also advice and tips, you will discover that a large part of that kind of health jigsaw puzzle, one piece of the jigsaw puzzle will tick most of the boxes.
Yeah.
Because they're all aimed at putting your cells in the environment that they actually evolved in.
Yeah.
Or artificially giving them what they need to have. So, we're talking about red light panels. Okay. So you get, full spectrum light bulbs, etc. So reducing the damage of the artificial convenient ways we have it. But if you do, if you want to go orthodox, then, well, anyway. But I want to get into also, by the way, cold thermogenesis again is another way. First of all, because of the
brown fats and all that.
Well, what is brown fat? It's mitochondrial dense. They uncouple, they produce heat, and of course, they will. That also increases your electrons. It also depletes deuterium. So again, another reason to do all these things, that we're talking about. It's not just one solution for one issue. Sauna, really good for deuterium depletion, charging your water battery.
Nice.
Sauna traditional, but also infrared sauna, of course.
Mhm.
What else have I forgotten? I think that is pretty much it. The last one, only thing I'd like to say is there's what I've been doing the last few months. I showed you the water earlier. This liter jug of tap water, is
If you bring it directly in front of yourself,
marvelous. It's got these little balls in the bottle, hard balls there.
Yeah.
I'm going to introduce these in my biohack sequence. If anybody wants to subscribe, they'll get 7 or 8 interesting products that do exactly what we've just been talking about. They're helping your cells, providing your cells artificially that environment that they actually thrive in. But these are, and I'm going to introduce it as not even Brian Johnson has balls like this. Sorry, I'm a man. I have to have this
Which
schoolboy
Brian
humor.
Johnson are you talking about, Jonathan? There's two that are famous in the so-called influencer space. There's the longevity one, and then there's Liver King.
They're the ones what?
Liver King. It's also
Liver
Brian
King.
Johnson.
Oh, okay. I mean the longevity one. Yeah, don't die. Okay. I don't even think he knows about these. These are called Kelby balls. They're ceramic somatids.
Okay.
Long story short, this water has in the little. It's very big in South Korea. They actually fill baths with it, and they use it in cancer treatment clinics. Particularly effective for leukemia, etc. But long story short, it also changes from H2O to H3O2, and it creates greater store of electrons in the water. So I don't know if it's identical subatomically to easy water, but it emits infrared. It actually absorbs UV and infrared and changes and their lipophilic surface, and it changes the atomic structure. Is that correct? The subatomic structure of water into electron-rich water. It separates the charge, so charge separated water. So that's what I drink these days. Interestingly, the thing about charge separated water is that you don't get biofilm creating on the, if you have a glass of water or a bottle, particularly plastic bottles, there's sort of a slimy film can appear on the inside. That's a biofilm, and that's where bacteria start. And this water doesn't create the biofilm. It doesn't allow that. That's quite interesting.
It'd be good to get some of those for. It's funny the way my brain works. One of the pet peeves I have with like an at-home jacuzzi, hot tub, cold plunge, any of that, is that you fill it up, you use it, and within a couple of weeks it starts to get that biofilm. Like maybe not even a couple of weeks in the summer here, within a couple of days you start to get that sliminess. I wonder if chucking a bunch of these in there would give you the benefits of the electrically separated water, and B, the benefit of less maintenance on having to clean the stupid thing.
Maybe, but you should know that in these baths that they're using these cancer in South Korea, and they're going to be, they're slowly, cancer clinics in the West are starting to come around to this. They use like 120 kilograms of these things. All right, this is 100 gram.
Expensive.
100 grams costs about 100 euros. Yeah, so imagine what 100 kilograms. I'd love to have.
You would have to be a Brian Johnson to afford this.
Well, I'm surprised that he hasn't looked at this. His advisors, but they come from the standard reductionist science. Nevertheless, fascinating area, little studied. Clearly has some interesting effects on, particularly in cancer treatment, but in South Korea, it's a much bigger thing.
Nice.
Coming here slowly. So that's what I want to say about water. The fact that it creates it moves into a new phase that we hadn't named or identified before between freezing and liquid that has an exclusion zone that acts a bit like a filter, but it also is a charge separation and it acts like an electron store. It can be increased in various ways. The most natural way that clearly we've somehow evolved to actually use this is the infrared light from the sun. And it's all down to this whole idea of like cell membrane potential, the potential charge potential in things like the electron transport chain, etc., etc. Net negative charge is health, is an easy way to understand it. And and it covers pretty much every surface of every molecule in our body. So that's one takeaway. The other one is deuterium, which is the heavier brother of hydrogen, heavier isotope of hydrogen, naturally present in small concentrations, but certain things we do can increase the concentration in our bodies. We're able to, of course, rebalance, but if we're not doing enough exercise, not getting enough UV light, not doing enough sauna, and we're eating too much food or getting too much deuterium into our system, then we will start breaking our cellular function. And by the way, it's stored. The body tries to prevent it from getting into the mitochondria and stores it as fat. So it's actually also present in body fat, adipose tissue. And again, there's things to do to reduce the deuterium in your diet are very similar to actually charging your water battery. A side note, in Hungary, they've done quite a lot of clinical research, clinical trials on using deuterium depleted water to prolong cancer sufferers' lives in combination with classic treatment by X times the length of survival rate, or even reducing tumors. But this is a very special protocol, specially made water, very expensive, that actually reduces the deuterium level by half or even more than to standard water.
Given you've made it this far into the episode, I can only assume that human metabolic health is a subject you find fascinating and engaging, and it resonates with you, and that's absolutely awesome because we're very much alike in that regard. And because of that, I want to take a moment to talk to you about potentially becoming a Zinzino independent partner in the same way that I have. You see, Zinzino have tremendous opportunities available for independent partners, meaning people who decide that they don't just want to be a customer, but instead want to use the concept of test-based personalized nutrition to benefit their own health, to take the guesswork out of their own health journeys in the same way that I have, but then to build that user story, to build that testimony of the differences that's made in our health journeys, and use that to market Zinzino's product, to market the concept of test-based personalized nutrition in the exact way that I'm busy doing right now, and bring on board other customers and other partners to grow the distribution network. And in doing so, you get handsomely rewarded through their compensation scheme, which is one of the best that I've seen in the industry. So if you'd like to explore setting up a side revenue, whether it be something that you only do a couple hours a week or something that you put a little bit more effort into and build into a full-fledged career, or anything in between, get in touch and let's have a talk about the opportunity and how this might be the right fit for you, not only to take the guesswork out of your personal health journey, but to also build you additional income streams that help to improve your financial situation and the possibilities for you and your family.
So anyway, and that's the two things I think about water. We now, hopefully the audience has understood that hydration isn't just about maintaining some sort of water balance, reminds me of energy balance, but actually you are giving your cells what they need to have charge. That I think is, for me, what I'd like the audience to take away. I promised you molecular hydrogen in a second, but
awesome. So, you said you would have a question that you wanted answered.
Okay, it's a question I do not know the answer to. I was pondering all this that we talked about today, and I was thinking, so what is the purpose of herbivore animals that spend all day, for instance, eating grass? Cows, for instance. Okay, so I forgot I was going to ask AI what the calorific content of grass was, because while cows eat a shitload of it every day, I would suggest that there must be some calorific content, some sugars in it, etc. But I imagine that given their size, it's highly inadequate. So we know that they're eating grass because of the fibers that are converted into things in their stomach, proteins, because that's how they get so bulky. So what is it
So
actually that they
interesting.
are?
And maybe I'm wrong, so I'm happy to be corrected either by yourself
I
or
don't know
someone
the
in the
answer,
audience.
so I've
Right?
got a theory, but
But my understanding, we take ruminants, for example, ruminants don't actually extract nutrition directly from the grass that they're eating. It goes into their chambered stomachs, and it's the rumen, the bacterial content of their stomachs that use that. And then the rumen that dies is the protein. And well, two things happen. The byproduct of the rumen digesting the fiber or the cellulose is the short chain fatty acids that are produced. And the cows, or the ruminant animals, use those. And then the protein provision is actually the bacteria, the rumen itself, dying off and then being digested and assimilated by the animal itself. So it doesn't actually directly use anything from the plant.
okay.
It's just the bacteria. It's the byproduct of the bacteria and then the
Mhm.
bacteria itself.
Okay, all right. Because so yeah. So in terms of energy, you're saying the short chain fatty acids are what they then put into their mitochondria to create
Yeah,
ATP.
that is the primary fuel source that they're getting, because they're not absorbing carbohydrate.
Okay.
So they don't digest plants the same way that we would. I don't know if it's different for, say, like hind gut fermenters, because you get different classes of herbivores, of
Right.
course. But to the best of my knowledge, the ruminants are not extracting carbohydrates or using carbohydrates. They're not running on carbohydrates the way that
Right.
we do.
The keto cows.
Yeah, well, that's part and parcel of why they develop such issues when you feed them the wrong things. So if you're feeding them grains, for instance, that they will then absorb
They get fat.
carbohydrates. Yeah, they'll absorb carbohydrates more readily, and they will get fat because they're not then,
Mm.
and they will get metabolic dysfunction and a whole bunch of issues that come with it. They get sick, they get human diseases, which is weird.
Yeah. Okay. Here's another thought that doesn't in any way contradict what you just said, but a thought that I came to. The grass they're eating contains uh, uh, electrically separated, charge separated water. That's the first thing. The first step of photosynthesis is it
Okay.
separates the charge of water. That is the very first thing we know about photosynthesis. So the water in plants is charge separated, at least for some stage of well, presumably continuously. So they're eating charge separated water, and they're outdoors normally, out there
Yeah.
all day in the field. So I'm just wondering to what degree there's an element of cellular battery, water
Oh,
battery
there must be loads.
going on
I was at
in
Marwell
cows.
Zoo
Mm.
with my family over the weekend, and I forget which gazelle it was. It wasn't a Thompson's gazelle, it was something else. But as you walk around and you see the pen and you see the animals running over in the distance, there's little placards with like facts and information about them. And I forget which particular gazelle this is, but you find them in northern Africa. So it's very, very deserty type conditions. And one of the fun fact or the interesting fact was they can go their entire lives without ever drinking water. They get all the water they need, as the fun fact put it out, from the plants that they eat.
Mm-hmm.
But now understanding what you've unpacked about metabolic water, it's quite likely that the plants they're eating are helping to replenish that easy water capacity and capability, and therefore they're able to create more of their own metabolic water and keep functioning on without having to drink from a pond and get smashed by a crocodile. So
Interesting. So it's an evolutionary advantage not to go and drink at the
yeah.
at the pond, right? And there you go. And they're
So yeah,
intellectual.
I think you're absolutely right. So in herbivores, I think there is an increased or an improved capacity to extract the easy water or the charge separated water that you need from the plants that you're eating, which maybe isn't present in omnivores and in carnivores, because we need the flesh. And I don't think I'm aware of any omnivore or carnivore that can boast the same capability to not have to drink exogenous water.
Right. Well, that's interesting. So in some ways, because they're in touch with the ground, they're outside, and they're eating plants that have easy water.
Although,
Maybe that's
I think I've just answered my own thing there, because polar bears, I don't think that you find polar bears existing readily around fresh water sources. I don't think they're able to drink salt water, so maybe polar bears don't drink exogenous water all that much.
okay.
But now we were just
I don't know.
speculating.
We're not speculating.
It'd be interesting to look into these things and try to come up with a scale of like what animals need how much. Yeah,
it would be fascinating. And this it's still it's a theory until it becomes accepted evidence-based science. But there is research over the past decades on water, how it works, the structures, more and more, of course, the subatomic and this whole easy thing, etc. I think, and the way it's kind of shaping, and what I've gathered from it is it really does fit really nicely into, what we just talked about, about gazelles, for instance. It explains.
It's like getting to look behind the veil and understand. Well, it's not just it's not as simplistic as, it's got some water in it and therefore they're hydrated. Like there's more complicated mechanisms involved.
What is hydration? What is hydration? And I'm saying and offering you the idea that it is the maintenance and sustenance of what is in effect a water battery and filter that coats all your biological molecules.
Yeah, that makes sense, and it goes a step further than my initial understanding, which was the hydration was to do with maintaining the conductivity of your cells.
Yeah, and I reckon Neil would be a great person to get on to talk specifically about things like charge in cells and cell membranes and that sort of thing, because that would link in.
To Neil about a little deep dive series.
Cool. Excellent. Right, I will definitely listen to that.
It's in talks, and hopefully we'll get it in the works soon.
Yeah. So, Ricky, just my final note, I will provide you with various links for the show notes. Awesome. I will also, because when I go through this, I sort of save lots of stuff. I'll put for my subscribers the extended show notes or links to videos, research, etc. So if anybody wants to get really into the nitty gritty and look up themselves, and I always say to people, know better, do better, and do your own research.
Yes.
And then you can just subscribe to the link that I think Ricky will put in the show notes on that. And that's so. Ricky, I asked you a few questions at the beginning. What do you think now?
No, that's awesome. That's very interesting. It has taken my understanding a good few steps deeper and further, which is awesome. And I'll be looking through those show notes that you provide myself, just because it's obviously an area that I need to build my own understanding on anyway. But yeah, I like that in terms of simplicity's sake. The steps that you could take to improve it are very similar and entwined with the steps that you would take for everything else. So I like that it keeps it simple for the layman, so to speak, in that if you're trying to address your lifestyle to help you build and improve metabolic health, it's not like it's a million different complicated things. There's actually a lot of synergy in what you're trying to do. And it's basically just get out of your own way and give your body what it needs from a external biological and evolutionary consistent perspective.
Get out your own way. Exactly.
Cool. Roderick, thank you very much. Been an absolute pleasure, sir.
No, all mine, and hopefully the listeners will take away lots of things from this.
Perfect. Thanks for your time, everyone.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching the episode. I hope that you found the conversation meaningful and informative, and I hope that it has empowered you with some tools and insights that you can take to tweak and improve your own lifestyle approach in pursuit of optimal metabolic health outcomes. If you've enjoyed the episode, and if you're enjoying the podcast, I'd like you to do me the kindness of please subscribing to the channel, giving it a like, maybe even giving it a share, help to raise awareness and get the podcast in front of as many viewers as possible, because it is my passion to try and help as many people as possible to understand more of the nuance around metabolic health and how to tweak their lifestyle in pursuit of optimal outcomes. Also, if you have any constructive feedback, things that you think I could improve on, any critiques, any criticisms, please do feed them back. I give you my solemn word that I will take them seriously, and I will, to the best of my ability, work to improve and to give you a more refined and more targeted product as a result of your feedback. So I will take it seriously, and I'll do what I can to improve the show. But again, thank you very much for watching. Keep thriving.